This one's wife, bored, senseless. Well, indeed, we may well be bored, senseless with this one's wife. Nevertheless, she continues as only she can to provide us with prodigious amounts of material that bear analysis to understand more about her narcissism and to explain to people precisely why she behaves as she does. Because it remains the case that so many people still remain mystified as to her behaviours, notwithstanding my considerable output explaining it each and every single time, which only goes to show that there's plenty of people who have yet to be exposed to my work, and there are some people who just simply do not get it. But putting all of that to one side, who has been bored senseless? Well, it's naturally the Prince of Pink Pancakes, Ginge. The Duke of Hazard has found himself, as Mr. Has-Been, being dragged along to another concert. And as the Mail reports through Elmira Tanatarova, he's already been spotted looking less than enthusiastic at a Beyoncé concert. And Prince Harry's latest outing to Katy Perry's Vegas show indicates he might not share his wife's penchant for pop. The Sussexes attended Katy Perry's Las Vegas show over the weekend. See immediate parts pass him for an explanation as to what all of that does vis-a-vis this one's wife's narcissism, with the Duchess of Sussex, 42, filmed dancing up a storm in a glamorous gem-encrusted ensemble. However, fans noticed that her husband, 39, who's previously expressed a fondness for electronic music, appeared less enthusiastic in his moves as the couple watched the pop star perform one of her last residency concerts at Resorts World Theatre. One social media clip, shared by user @LaCatarina on X, formerly known as Twitter, saw the mother of two swaying to the hit Roar as she clapped her hands to the rhythm and boogied along. Fuck me, who writes this? Meanwhile, next to her, Harry gently rocked himself back and forth to the beat. I can almost imagine that he's kind of drooling, his eyes all over the place, and he's going, "Mummy, Mummy, what have I done? Oh my God, she's completely ensnared me, and I'm being brought to pop concerts that I don't like. I want to go home, but she won't let me." Other shots from the night show a very excited this one's wife grinning next to her more subdued husband. Fans of the royal couple remarked that the prince doesn't appear to actually enjoy music concerts. You don't say. He always looks bored, one poster said. Megsy just drags him along. This one's wife loves concerts, another observed. Harry, however, is take it or leave it. Some also expressed their fondness at the Duke's attempts at following his wife's dancing. "Ah, so sweet. Poor Harry does his best, bless him," one said. Now, of course, this is also indicative of the way that the narcissist controls the victim by dragging him along to something that he doesn't really want to go to. Now, it is, of course, in order to be balanced, often the case that a spouse will have to do things that they don't really want to because it's keeping their other half happy. So, for instance, it's commonly going to an event which isn't really your cup of tea. There are ways of getting around that, of course. You can suggest to somebody, well, why don't you go with your friends? They're into Katy Perry like you. I'm not. I'll just be a bit of a damp squib, really, and it'll be better for you to spend time with your friends at the concert and enjoy yourself. So there are ways of getting around it. And in other instances, people will say, I know that you really enjoy this particular artist or this particular actor or whatever it might be, or this film's very much up your street. Yes, I'll come with you because I know that'll make you happy. And it's part of that making a sacrifice and compromise that apparently goes on in relationships. But it's different with the narcissistic dynamic. Harry simply doesn't have a choice. He's told that he has to go, and his less than enthusiastic visage as he sits there isn't necessarily going to go down particularly well with his handler. It demonstrates, of course, that she has no emotional empathy for him, because even if he were to protest and say, look, why don't you just go with Misha? I'm really not into this. Her narcissism naturally perceives that as a threat to control and causes her to reject that suggestion. Accordingly, she will then use various manipulations to ensure that he attends. Why don't you want to come? Do you not love me anymore? Use of guilt. If you don't come, I won't do this. Threaten loss. You better come, otherwise this'll happen. Use of threat. You never want to do anything with me anymore. Revision of history, use of absolutes. It's quite common for narcissists to use the always, never descriptions in order to paint a picture that is far worse than it actually is. You are always causing problems for me. You never want to do anything with me anymore. That's redolent of the black and white thinking of the narcissist. And so similarly here, if Harry had actually tried to find his balls and suggest that this isn't really my bag, why don't you go with Misha and I'll stay at home and play with my building blocks, that's a threat to control, resulting in the necessity of this one's wife manipulating him into ensuring that he goes, with a variety of different manipulations that could be utilised to achieve that. Thus, Harry has to come along. He's dragged along and he doesn't look happy about it. Does this one's wife care? No, she doesn't. He's in sustained devaluation, and the fact that he sits there with a face like a slapped arse will be used against him later on as part of devaluing him. You could have at least looked like you were enjoying it. You always managed to spoil it. It was a great concert, but you sat there with the hump on. You always look fucking miserable. What's your problem? Etc., etc. And therefore the recent past is brought up and thrown in his face by way of further manipulations. He just can't win. By suggesting, look, it's not my kind of thing, why don't I just stay away? Thus, you don't have to look at my miserable face because I'm not enjoying it. That threatens her sense of control over him, resulting in her turning around and saying, no, you need to come. And then thereafter, when he can't help but sit there and think, well, I'm not going to force myself to look like I'm enjoying myself because I'm not, and she should understand that this is not my kind of music, the fact that he couldn't be bothered to put a smile on his face and really enjoy himself would result in this one's wife using that against him. His failure to enjoy was also being picked up by Maureen Callahan, also writing in the Mail. She states, all is not well, it seems, in the House of Sussex, specifically with our disconsolate Duke. Here was Prince Harry, glowering and glum at a Katy Perry show in Las Vegas over the weekend. Perry's stock in trade is glitter, rainbows and cheer, the kind of guaranteed fluff that compels even this one's wife to shake her mantle of perpetual victimhood and have a visibly great time. Harry, meanwhile, looked like he'd just been given a catastrophic diagnosis. His sour disposition called to mind America's reigning champ of churlishness, Ben Affleck. Remember his demeanour at this year's Grammys, simmering and sulking next to Smiles on glammed-up wife J-Lo. See parts pass him for my analysis of that interaction. Look motivated, Lopez reportedly snapped at Affleck that night, assertion of control. That's a note Harry should take, unless, as I suspect, he wants the world to see his misery. After all, he's been here before. In September, a grey-suited Harry stood still as a statue at Beyoncé's sparkling Renaissance show, checking his phone and pouting, while this one's wife in a silver sequin skirt danced and cheered from their private box at California's SoFi Stadium. That little vignette said it all. Harry, for all his wealth, fame, privilege and access, for all that hard work finding freedom, remains at his core bitter, resentful and angry. This is not someone who, counter to the pre-this one's wife memory of Harry, has a sense of humour or joie de vivre. Not somebody who, unlike his late mother, finds post-winter purpose in helping those less fortunate, preferring to sully himself with Netflix deals and public self-pity parties. Harry appears to be, for want of a better phrase, a colossal drag. Look no further than his father's historic coronation in May. Harry, sans this one's wife, and seated third row. Rather than conduct himself accordingly, rather than accept the olive branch, Henry refused to return to Buckingham Palace after the ceremony. He said not one word to his father or brother. Instead, he headed straight back to LA, a whirlwind 28 hours that left the royals baffled. As one friend of the family told Vanity Fair, Harry's behaviour left them wondering why he had bothered to come at all. One makes one's choices, the source said. Well, of course, what they would do well to bear in mind, of course, is the fact that he's under the control of a narcissist. And yes, he can be a sulky bugger because he has strong narcissistic traits. But those of you who have been ensnared by a narcissist know how difficult it is for you to go and do things on your own. And when you do, the battle that you face beforehand and, invariably, the lambasting you receive on your return. Usually, it's not asking you about whether you've had a good time. Indeed, you may return to silence, being given a present silent treatment. And because of the conditioning that Harry has experienced, that's why he goes racing back to the States, because he knows that for every hour he stays away, it's going to make it worse when he eventually returns. And, through a sense of duty, he naturally had to attend his father's coronation, but he knows and dreads what's waiting for him on his return because of the sustained devaluation. It would appear that the writer isn't familiar with the way that a narcissist would treat their victim and the impact it has upon that individual in terms of how it then strains their relationship with others and means that often they don't attend events, and when they do, they're there fleetingly because they are aware of how they'll be treated if they stay away too long by the narcissist. The article continues by explaining Harry is now experiencing something that, given the constantly traumatized look on his face, seems alien to him: consequences. As every astute observer, critic, columnist, reviewer and rubbernecker has warned since Harry embarked on his inglorious exile, he and this one's wife were bound to face repercussions. After that initial high of sitting down with Oprah and slinging baseless accusations of racism, barely concealing their malevolent profiteering impulses behind self-actualization and the Monty Shit Show sunshine, well, it turns out the Sussexes have become a punchline. This clearly does not sit well. Alas, the gloves are off, the knives are out, the schadenfreude are delectable. In that now legendary South Park episode, the Duke and Duchess were eviscerated as professional victims who, as one character laments, refuse to go away despite proclaiming they want zero attention. I'm sick of hearing about them. I can't get away from them. A cri de coeur for us all. That was in February, weeks after Harry's memoir Spare, called Wah in South Park, hit shelves. The would-be literary classic became fodder for late-night talk shows. Jimmy Kimmel mocking Harry's frostbitten todger, Stephen Colbert, who interviewed the Prince, comparing him to Harry Potter and forcing him to down tequila shots for cheap laughs. Fresher humiliations abound. Spotify dropping This One's Wife's podcast in June and cancelling the couple's $20 million deal entirely, with executive Bill Simmons publicly castigating them as fucking grifters. The animated series Family Guy similarly brutalised them a few weeks ago, with Harry and This One's Wife sitting poolside as a butler approaches to hand the prince a cheque. "Sir," he says, "your millions from Netflix for no one knows what." "Put it with the rest of them," drones an imperious Harry. And over the weekend, former Vanity Fair editor Graydon Carter took yet another shot at Harry and This One's Wife, predicting that their marriage would last years rather than decades. Vanity Fair, which put a little-known This One's Wife on its cover back in 2017 with the headline, "She's Just Wild About Harry," which This One's Wife later claimed was racist. Victimhood revision of history. Perhaps this is all part of Harry's rage. He and his wife, the former C-list actress of Suits, were doubtless expecting a new life as Hollywood royalty. Invitations to the Met Gala, the Oscars, to Barack Obama's 60th birthday party, to Oprah events and George and Amal Clooney's humanitarian awards. All have yet to materialise. Hollywood, by and large, laughs at them now. Our would-be Duchess of Hearts had her grand moment this spring as the Duchess of Hertz. A subsequent breathless car chase through Midtown Manhattan was panned as a farce. And so a private jet shared with the likes of Cameron Diaz, forgotten musician Benji Madden, and Avatar actress Zoe Saldana to see Katy Perry in Vegas surely offers Harry little consolation. Compared to his former life as a royal, it must seem a cheap and seamy kind of fame, consorting with mid-level celebs in a joyless scrum to prove What exactly? Harry doesn't seem to know either. Meanwhile, his father's 75th birthday approaches with a kind of Cold War detente. As a friend of Charles told the UK Sunday Times, there are issues that aren't resolved and there won't be a rapprochement anytime soon. But that doesn't change the King's love for his son. He'll never not invite his son to a family gathering, because that's not who he is. The implication is that Harry, pointedly not this one's wife, is always invited, and always expected to turn those invitations down. Appreciated for it, perhaps. As this one's wife plots her much-vaunted rebrand, Look at Me, Don't Look at Me, Harry must clearly wonder what's next. His memoir, unself-aware and substance-free, lingers in remainder bins. Spotify is done, Netflix is on the bubble, his family can never trust him again. He has become the prince of his own pyre, the architect of his own misery. Call it karma, consequence, or poetic justice, but this was always the ending. Our prince building something that was only ever going to burn all the way down. And the reason for that is because he has been ensnared by a narcissist. Because when it is the relationship between the narcissist and the intimate partner primary source, this is where it ends up. This is what happens. And now, once again, he gets dragged to a concert, looks miserable, sits there not particularly enjoying himself, and he must surely wonder to himself, what the fuck did I do? Well, once again, Harry, as you were bored senseless, you had plenty of opportunity to mull it over. But as of yet, you've yet truly to understand what it is that has actually happened to you. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.